Hey, this is Pamela Schneider. I'm the retail editor for Blue Book Services, and this is the Produce Reporter Week in Review. We had a lot happening this week, kind of big news. Late last week, we heard that Prima Wawona is they tried to they were pursuing a sale, and apparently no takers.
Well, at least no takers that they liked.
Right.
That appears to be more accurate. So yeah, they're going to liquidate, and it's going to happen pretty fast. There's a hearing in early February, and it could go down as soon as then. And I thought one of the interesting things about when they're going to liquidate, this wasn't in the court filings, but uh, the San Joaquin Valley News, or sorry, Sun, reported that they have over 13,000 acres of land to liquidate with an estimated value of 370 million. And it's 7 different plots all around the Fresno County area. I mean, we know it's the largest stone fruit packer in the US. And so it's as it breaks up, it's going to be massive.
Yeah, I mean, and the scope and scale of this is also kind of goes along with some of the stuff we're talking about with ownership in the produce industry. For the longest time, I'm not exactly sure who the ownership group was, but then they merged, right? And then they had some capital come into it and some third-party ownership. And it looks like none of that worked out. And it's messy. And it's more
Well,
than
it
we can
was
like go back and forth in.
Yeah, it was Growen who was part of that merger, and he was CEO early in the merger before Payne Schwartz took over with the big money and forced him out. He filed suit against him, and that's still ongoing. I mean, if someone hasn't dug through the drama, they really should click through some of the links and go back and see some of it. It is an ugly story and some major accusations, some misdealings, and um, it hasn't been proven. There's still allegations at this point, but I mean, there's private equity coming in. There are goods and there are bads,
Yeah,
and this is an example of when it's gone bad. And it's gone real bad.
we had last year at the beginning of the year a really deep dive analysis of what happened with J&J in Minneapolis, St. Paul. So I'm sure that this could be something that our folks could take a look at and just kind of analyze the timeline of where this was and what it's. I mean, we're gonna have to. It's happening fast, so we're gonna see some grower shippers pick up some land, and I'm really wondering how much of that goes into something like almonds, for example, because the almond business has not been doing amazingly in California over the last like year or so. As we've got some water issues, we've got some climate issues, we've got some market issues with almonds. So who's going to be buying these trees? Um, Peach consumption ain't great over the last couple of years, and we've talked about this a lot with a lot of the folks talking about demand generation and issues with getting flavor in stores, different business models trying to bring different fruit to the market. So I'm wondering, I mean, it's a great time to pick up some land if you're in the market, I guess. Um, but who's going to be buying it? What are they going to do with that land is what I want to know. So a lot going on.
That'll be a big story to cover this year, I'm sure.
And speaking of, the other big story is we had early this week, we had a story about the Washington State Attorney General, suing to block the Kroger Albertsons merger. And then a day later, we get a statement from Kroger Albertsons and CNS about they're pushing back the timeline on things. And then some more analysis we have from Richard Smalley saying, maybe some people are right to be wondering if this is going to go through.
Yeah, he's pointed out several times in the past couple of years since the merger's been announced that the Biden administration's FTC is not merger friendly, and that's a big difference from really the previous 20 years of presidential administrations where mergers were kind of rubber stamped for the most part. And there have been other industries that have had mergers shut down, not directly by the FTC, but the FTC chairperson has talked about it, uh, about not being particularly merger friendly, being skeptical. I mean, one of the examples that Richard gave was just this week when JetBlue was blocked from buying Spirit Airlines. And I think it's a little bit different than this grocery one, because I don't think one of the two would file bankruptcy if this merger doesn't happen, like it looks like with Spirit. But I mean, it would be a shakeup. And as Richard points out, when you announce a merger and try to start working on it, any delays uh, are a very bad sign, because if it's going to go through, it goes through and nothing really stops it. And the more delays there are, the more momentum loses. Investors don't like it. The public doesn't, I mean, when they're hearing about it, they don't like it. So I think it will be a story that we will continue to keep covering. Um, I haven't, I don't know. Do you have an opinion on it?
Well, I have a feeling that the longer it drags on, the more squeaky wheels will start speaking up and have time to put up a fight. If you kind of rewind to the Safeway Albertsons merger, that one just seemed to just it buzzed right through. They divested a bunch of stores, sold off a couple hundred of them to Hagen, and then that crashed and burned very quickly. But I remember some analysts saying that was a strategy all along, and that they weren't planning on that to succeed. And so I mean, if you think about the only messy merger we've had in our time together, at least in covering the produce industry and the retail, has been when Whole Foods bought Wild Oats. That was messy. That took a long time. It took more than a year. And a lot of regulatory approval. I mean, Whole Foods got acquired by Amazon, no big deal. For me, it doesn't surprise me that there are some folks that are like, hey, let's take a look at this, take a little closer look. Let's take a look at the overlap, because there is quite a bit of overlap in some of these markets. Both of them are pretty much nationwide grocers, except for a couple of key market areas. And you're already seeing Kroger like put feelers in those areas where they don't exist already. So I'm not surprised that they're taking a closer look at it. I would have been surprised if they had just rubber stamped it and sent it on as quickly as we saw some of the previous mergers go through.
I think one of the things that does resonate with me is when Kroger and Albertsons say that it's not a super concentrated market. There are a lot of competitors, and um, one of their points is that they don't necessarily even compete with the grocery store down the street so much as they compete with Amazon and Walmart when it comes to online grocery. And I think that is a legitimate point. I mean, it's not as silly as when some of the Congress people were fighting like the sandwich mergers, as if we can't make sandwiches ourselves. You remember that, right? When,
Right.
um, but I mean, you have limited places to buy groceries, so that is a legitimate concern. Um, but this isn't Canada or Europe when there are only a handful who dominate the market. I mean, they dominate in certain regions. I mean, even the domination isn't as big. So I just think it's a more competitive market, and it's a harder argument to say that it is monopolizing.
I also think that the current economy and inflation and grocery prices and consumers being really, really concerned about the price of groceries has lawmakers a little more cognizant and a little more careful about reducing competition, because competition breeds lower prices in a lot of these markets. We got a follow up to last week's discussion about WinCo and Aldi, and our good friend John Pandel store checked for us and got us some price comparisons. And honestly, WinCo and Aldi they are such polar opposites on store format. Aldi is extremely small. WinCos are giant. Aldi limited assortment. WinCo has every single thing you'd ever think about buying. It's actually pretty funny to see how different they are. And how similar their prices were.
Yeah, well, I'm going to visit my brother in Idaho in a few weeks, and I'm going to make a stop at Winco because that's where it's based. It's based in Boise. They have lots of stores around there, and I'm gonna do a little check myself. Take a steal some of your recipe, your store check recipe.
Right. Actually, you know what the store check is all about? There is a method to the store check if you need some advice. It's very little talking, lots of photos. I find that to be the most effective one. And pick out, what would be the appropriate music to go with on your store check adventure. Is it John Denver? Let's get some
Oh, no,
country road.
it does seem a little more Rockies, and it's not technically in the Rockies. It's in the Snake River Basin. So I'll
Ah.
give it some thought.
Well, you'll have to let me know so I can post it on my TikTok.
Well, we can't. You've already brought up Aldi, and I'm an Aldi shopper, and I have to say their promotion this week really got me. Had a Super
We
Bowl promotion where the 2 weeks leading up to the Super Bowl, they're offering 25% off some of the Super Bowl favorites. They didn't specifically mention produce, but they did have produce highlighted in a lot of their photos of their promotion. But the promotion is get a quarterback.
yes,
Isn't that the best thing ever? It's like, ooh, a double entendre. No, it's a
it's a
triple entendre. 25% off quarterback position. And as everyone who shops at Aldi knows, in order to get a cart, you stick your quarter in the slot and you get that quarter back.
oh
Return your
oh
card.
bravo. I
That's
mean,
very impressive. Very impressive. I
definitely.
they'll have logo wear and it'll be sold out in the first 5 minutes it's open.
They definitely have to give the person who came up with that. I mean, what are we gonna give to him? A fruit platter, a veggie tray. There's a lot of Super Bowl related, Super Bowl adjacent ones that aren't like maybe not necessarily specific to the Super Bowl, but the one that came out this morning that we didn't run because there's no produce angle. I thought was adorable was the our household's quarterback Kirk Cousins is doing something with Tostitos for the Super Bowl. I thought that was adorable. So we're gonna start seeing more and more promotions for the big game over the next couple of weeks as we approach the big game. You're not allowed to use Super Bowl in any of your promotions unless you're officially licensed by the NFL and the Super Bowl. But as journalists, we can mention it.
News
Um,
organizations are exempt. And as
yep.
long as a certain team is alive, I'm gonna wear something every week. And they're still alive. Check in next week.
Yeah, check in next week. My team's still hanging out. I mean, actually, they are my team at the moment because that is the place of my birth. As the Vikings didn't even make the playoffs.
Yeah, well,
So
Kirk got hurt.
I know they didn't do great without him, so that kind of shows you how good he was, right? All right, well, that's it for the Produce Reporter and Minor Sports Broadcast. Week in review. If you are not getting the Produce Reporter newsletter, you need to go to producebluebook.com and sign up.
You see my new mug?
Oh, nice. I mean, they are getting really good at that. Nice.
Oh
My kids
yeah.
would love that. My kids are huge fans of Perry the Platypus.
Oh yeah.
I don't have anything new other than, I mean, I got a gnome for Christmas. It's a
That's
kitty
not bad.
cat eating gnomes, but I collect gnomes, so.
This is this is a high talent option. So this is done by the owner of the ceramic studio, by one of my kids.
Yeah, right. I know. The owner of the ceramic studio. Yeah.
That would be my wife.
Yes.
He is the most talented.
She's definitely way more talented than I am at ceramics. I've done it once or twice in my time, and I would definitely need some lessons.